Welcome back to another unboxing. Orc players, it's a small week for us. We're not getting our codex or anything, but we are getting Ufthak Blackhawk. Some good, some bad about this model, and let's get into it. This is a very small week for releases, so I figured I'd do something a little extra. Instead of just showing off the sprue and the contents of the box, because it's literally a sprue, a base, and some directions, I figured I would actually put it together and paint it up. If you haven't heard about this model yet, we'll get the bad right out of the way early. Unfortunately, this model is straight to Legends. Even though he's a named character, and he's kind of in the current Orc lore, he doesn't have any competitive rules. So you can use him in just friendly casual games, though. GW did put out a comment saying that you could use him as a regular war boss. Problem with that is he comes on a 50mm base and war bosses are on 40mm. So a little converting or just general playing loose with the rules. Most people probably won't care. Anyway, to my painting studio. So he is a Black Library Commemorative series. Meaning, like we've seen in the past with like Bayard's Revenge and stuff like that. He is a model specifically out of one of the books that they do as kind of a commemorative series. So he probably won't be around very long. So not to support FOMO or anything, but if you like this model, you might want to consider picking him up. I have not read all of the books yet. I am actually reading Brutal and Cunning, which is the first book in his series so far, I believe. This model is being launched alongside his next one, the Big Dakka. I look forward to reading. If you haven't read any workbooks, they're pretty fun. I do enjoy them. Anyway, on the building process, I am going to do some sub-assembly. I'm going to keep his cape and his little power pack thing separately, just because painting with wires and behind capes is terrible. Gonna start off by giving him a black prime with my airbrush. I'm not gonna zenithal him just because I want to work from the darker and blend up lighter. It's kind of been something I've been practicing on with skin tones. With most of my orc army so far is speed paints, so using regular paint is kind of refreshing, and I feel like it's kind of building my skill. I do a very lazy metal where I just take, in this instance, Surcoat Silver, and do a heavy dry brush over black. Usually my primer. If my prime is not black, I will paint it black before putting the silver on. So getting his hammer and his gun. For the skin tone, as you see there, I'm going to be using the Duncan Rhodes Too Thin Coats. Starting from the darkest, and again, working my way up. Apologies if my hand's getting any weird angles or it's hard to see sometimes. I'm still kind of getting used to painting under a camera. It's something I want to do a lot more though, so I think I'm getting better at it. Anyway, after the darkest green is on there, I will be starting to do heavier highlights on the more raised parts of the skin, only leaving the dark green in the deepest recesses. And once that's done, sure enough, onto the lightest green and doing more of the raised spots, just leaving more darker recesses for the second tone. So all the parts like the lips and the cheeks and eyebrows and stuff, the highest parts of all the various muscles. It's really starting to come together at this layer. I will be doing one more, but I will be mixing the lightest green with a yellow tone, as you'll see here in a second. There it is, Yellow Flame by Duncan Rhodes. I'm really enjoying using his paint. I think I said it in the last painting video I did. I highly recommend it to anybody. And again, we're just going on the highest points of everything, and it really just brings that last bit together. And I'm actually painting this model like the box, so some of his armor pieces here will be yellow, as hard as yellow is to paint. Even though it happens to be my favorite color, I do not enjoy painting yellow. And just hitting some of the other pieces, going with the box as much as I possibly can. This is probably the hardest part, was freehanding some yellow flame-like patterns on the edge of his cape here. I think it turned out very okay, but it definitely could have been better. But I'm happy with it. Then using the Curious leather for the browns, like his boots, his armband, his handle of his hammer. I'm not going to go as heavy on the highlights on the leather. I think doing it on the skin is just, it's good enough. It makes the model look well enough and saves you a lot of time. A lot of people don't even recommend kind of painting all the gubbins and stuff anyway, but this is kind of a centerpiece model, so I do put some Seraphim Sepia on the yellow just to kind of hide my mistakes, blend them in a little bit more, and then go over it with the original yellow just to kind of bring it up a little bit. This is where the model starts to really come together. And then some gray on the highlight parts of the pants. I think I originally did a little too light here. I do go back and kind of blend it back down a bit, because the pants read more gray than they do black, which isn't terrible. I actually forget which, I think it's Griffin Claw that I use for these. Again, Duncan Rhodes. That's kind of my formula for teeth, is like a skeleton bone color, and then doing a skeleton horde wash over it from GW. It is technically a contrast paint, but I constantly use it more like a wash, kind of thin it down a little bit. And then just some thin highlights over the boots, just to bring them out a little bit. And just to make this leather stand out a little bit more on his handle, I'm gonna heavily dry brush some of that bone color over it just to make it look extra worn out. I've never painted Drukhari before, and I don't think I'm equipped enough to paint their armor properly, but my friend has a teal Drukhari army that this dry brush kind of mimics a little better than actual Drukhari, so I felt it was fitting. I used a cuttlefish paint for this. And then just a couple red dots for the lenses. And then just going over some of the detail on the little power pack. Overall, this model so far has been super fun. If you ever want to practice on flesh tones, I recommend Orks. I know it's green flesh, but the premise kind of translates to other fleshes. Start dark and work your way up, just instead of greens, do flesh tones. Now I'm dry fitting his cape to see. It does have a kind of a bad gap that kind of annoys me, but it's too late to go back. Anyway, so I didn't want a super red squig for Princess, so I decided to go with like a reddish brown tone and work it way up to a more pink squig. I feel like that's a little more fitting for a squig named Princess. If you don't know the story of Princess, I highly recommend looking it up or reading the book. It's pretty great. Won't go into too much spoilers, but she gets her name because orcs are illiterate. It's pretty great. Check it out. Anyway, on to the shock attack gun here. I didn't really know how to mimic how they did it. I'm sure they might have a tutorial somewhere, but I basically just kind of went and panel lined, kind of, a white ink, so it'd flow into the recesses, and then I'm going to go over it with this blue shade here. I think it captured the right idea well enough. It could have been better, and I might look on how to improve that in the future. And now I'm just going over Princess with a pink highlight. The pink is a mixture of a more cuttlefish pink sketch paint and a cuttlefish glaze paint. And now onto the basing. I'm going to be using this Pro Acryl Brown Earth. I'm going to be a little bit lazy with the basing on this, because my orcs have a jungle theme to them, so it's a lot of like knee-high foliage and stuff like that, and I didn't want to kind of completely hide Princess in the brush. And also, the current plants I have for it, I'm just not a huge fan of. So I'm going to be changing those up pretty soon. But, other than that, he's looking pretty done. And that's going to be it for this episode. Just a short and sweet little new release rundown that happens to be the faction I play, so I figured I would get it painted up and posted as soon as possible. Model is super awesome, very fun to paint. I'm loving the shock attack weapons, but let us know what you thought of the video. Are you picking up this orc here? Do you despise orcs and want to let us know how much you despise orcs? If you made it this far, we super appreciate it. Let us know what you think in the comments. Any likes, comments, or subscribes help us out a bunch. Helps us keep doing what we love doing, and that's talking about minis. Bye!